It looks like we are getting some early hints as to what we, as Raptors fans, can be ready to expect come the trade deadline. What's up, everybody? It is JJ Buckets, and yeah, we're going to talk about Gary Trent Jr. today, who's who I'm alluding to naturally. Before I fully get into things, just make sure you really leave a like on the video. It helps the algorithm out a lot, and it helps me out a lot, and I will take all the help I can get right now. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel as well. If you plan on doing any sports betting in the future, also check out my link in the description below. It gets a sign-up bonus when you join, so make sure you're taking advantage of that if you plan on doing it. Other than that, yeah folks, let's hop into today's video. So we have two reports to talk about here today. The first says that Gary Trent Jr. is likely to opt out of his player option at the end of the season, which I don't really think that's too surprising. I mean, realistically speaking, Gary wants to get paid. I think this is something I have touched upon before on this channel, so I don't think that one comes as a real shock. Young basketball player with a decent upside in this league and that has shown a decent amount in this league, wants to see if he can secure the bag. You could pretty much put that as the headline. But the big one I think that followed that one up is that the Raptors see Gary Trent Jr. as their top trade candidate, which is interesting because again, it's something that I feel like you could have more or less suspected. I've talked about it before on this channel about the fact that the Raptors are not realistically gonna be able to pay everybody from the team that's currently there, and quite frankly I don't think it's worth paying everybody from the team that's there, because that's currently constructed, especially right now, despite the fact that we're finally coming off a win that broke that losing streak. The team's not constructed well enough to, you know, have the championship aspirations that I think Masai, Nick Nurse, etc., in the locker room have. And Gary Trent Jr., whose contract is coming up, whose player option is coming up, and that he is apparently opting out of, I don't know if that's a guy that you keep around for the championship vision, realistically, and that, you know, has produced this next upcoming rumor where he is the top trade candidate on the team. And it's interesting to me because I think any time that there has been a big star available, or, you know, something of the sort, Gary Trent Jr.'s name is usually one of the ones that gets tossed around into trade rumors, and this is even before the information that, you know, he's probably opting out of his contract. I think realistically part of it is because you always expected him to opt out of the contract. And again, Gary Trent Jr. can probably garner a good payday in this league, a payday that I don't believe the Raptors would match, especially if we're looking at this season. You know, Gary Trent Jr.'s move to the bench I think is indicative that, you know, Nick Nurse doesn't really see him as highly and as valuable as some of the other pieces on this team. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Gary Trent Jr. is a good player. Gary Trent Jr. is a very good player, but maybe the expectations have tempered about what his ceiling can be with this team. So with that in mind, they're starting to look elsewhere, and they're starting to see, hey, what can we get for this guy? And sadly, I do think some of the better deals have passed you by. I mean, if you're talking about the offseason, obviously you had Kevin Durant, and honestly the big one to me would have been you had Donovan Mitchell on the table. Now obviously it would have taken much more than Gary Trent Jr., but you know, in a Donovan Mitchell trade, for example, Gary Trent Jr. would have naturally been thrown into that package with whoever else to make the salaries work, and obviously the draft pick compensation, etc. Now, as you're in this season, it's gonna be interesting because, again, I talked about it, I believe it was last video, a little bit, that the packages, you know, if you're trying to retool, which is probably where I would think the Raptors want to go, as opposed to the, you know, reset route, or well, I don't want to call it tank, because I don't think there is a point in this season where the Raptors are going to go outright tank unless they're just stupidly bad by season's end, which I think this group, despite its struggles this season, and obviously a lot of those struggles stemming from injuries, I don't think this group is outright bad enough to tank. I think, like I said last video, they'd be looking at something like a soft reset, you know, where they move pieces like a Gary, like whoever else, and try to you know, build something that's still competitive probably for the near future, but just in a different mold because, well, because Vision 6.9 is not working. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what is out there for Gary Trent Jr. At this point, I would imagine it would be tough for me to imagine him being here past the trade deadline. Maybe if they can't get a deal that they really like at the deadline, you know, he sticks around to the offseason where they maybe sign and trade him to a team and get some pieces back that way. But if the Raptors do intend to be players at the trade deadline, I think Gary Trent Jr. is very naturally the name that's going to be in the mix there, as well as maybe some other pieces if they can salary match. Again, it will be really interesting over these next few months to see which names kind of emerge as trade targets, which teams decide to blow it up or move some pieces, etc., etc. Again, like the Chicago Bulls are, I think, the most natural candidate to look at. You know, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic. That team is not going to get it done in terms of accomplishing anything significant in this team outside of outside of maybe a playoff spot. But besides for that, again, like I want to wait and see what other teams decide to, you know, make major moves, because right this damn second, it is tough to look around and see the moves that catapult you closer to a championship, right? I think Miles Turner is a name that would be very interesting. It's a name I've thrown around for years, and I don't know if the Pacers see him, you know, in their long-term future with the young core. I mean, he's still fairly young enough that they could absolutely keep him around, but he's also a hot trade commodity. I would say he has been a hot trade commodity every year, despite the fact that he hasn't actually been traded. So it'll be interesting that if he's available, if the Raptors throw their hat into the ring, because in a lot of ways, Miles Turner fits really exactly what you need on this team. And again, it's something that I've talked about year after year. I'm a big Miles Turner guy. That is no secret, I think, to anybody that's followed this channel for as long as I've been doing it. But yeah, so that's more or less it, I think. I have questions for you folks. Like, what do you see the Raptors doing with Gary Trent Jr.? Do you see him packaging off with somebody else at this deadline? Do you think they make a push for a win now? Do you think they make a push for maybe draft picks? Do you actually think that he sticks around on this team? That would be another alternative. Yeah, like, I'm very interested to hear everybody else's thoughts on this, because there's so many avenues of possibility with Gary Trent Jr. here that I just want to see where everybody's head's at. Yeah. So drop it in the comment section below. Let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching today. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Again, it helps me out a ton, and it would be great to break out from the slump that, you know, feels like forever to me that I've been in. So if you do help me with that, I really appreciate it. And if you're new here and you're catching this channel for the first time, subscribe to it. I drop at least a video a week, so I'm always good for that. Again, hoping to move up to more in the future, but it's just hard with my current schedule. Yeah, it's been JJ Buckets. It's been a real one, and I will see everybody next time.